Hi, my name's Dan. I hope you're doing really well today. In this lesson, I'm going to show you exactly how to play that bass line, which is Attention by Charlie Puth. I'll start off by showing you the techniques and the note lengths, exactly how to nail it. Then I'll break down the theory of it. I'll show you exactly why it's an amazing bass line, how to create similar yourself. And then I'll end by giving you a kind of gear tip involving a 5-string. That's what I was playing in the intro. This is a 4-string that's tuned down a half step, so make sure you do that. We're in the key of D sharp minor, more of that later. Tuning down a half step gives you this. That note, that's a D sharp, that's the first note of the line. And let's go through it first of all. So this is the first bar. It's a really funny headspace here because you've tuned down, but then you have to call the notes, D sharp, which is, it'll probably mess with your head a bit, as it is mine, but here we go. That's a D sharp and a low and an octave away. So open string, probably do a lot of fret numbers, and 7th fret of the A string. Then you've got a C sharp 2 frets lower on the 5th fret. So it goes like this. You've got 2 hammer-ons there, okay? So that rhythm there, that's a dotted 8th note and a 16th note. And then we've got the hammer-on. So you pluck the 5th fret, and then you hammer down with 3rd or 4th finger, doesn't matter which one you use. Just concentrate on making sure the hammered note is as loud as the plucked note. Also keep the 2nd low D sharp quite long. Note length is really important here. Now I didn't mention this actually. This isn't played on a bass guitar. This is Charlie Puth just programming in what sounds like a very good bass guitar, which is, I guess, a bit worrying for us bass players, but don't worry. If you're in a gig, you can play it, you can get the sound, and our job isn't over yet. Okay, after that. Now this is the bit I've had to adapt a little bit to get it on a 4-string. We've got a C sharp octaves. Notice the rhythm is exactly the same. With octaves, you've got 1st finger or index finger on the lower note, and then the longer middle finger can reach to that G string. So start off the pluck with your index. I'm anchoring on the E string here. I've got my thumb rested on the E, just to mute, okay? I don't want any unwanted noise here. But there are lots and lots of ways of muting and anchoring. But here, I'm kind of transitioning to like this as a muting technique, okay? And as I said, there's millions of ways to mute. If you have ways that are different to this, no problem. Okay, this is what I'm doing with this little chromatic bit here. So that rhythm there is quite awkward to get. It's just after beat 3, so make sure you're tapping your foot at all times. Lots of 16th notes going on, which it's 100 beats per minute, quite slow, but when you're tapping your foot, just in your head, just subdivide the beats, every beat, into 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Some people go 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E, and to just have 16th notes going, that will be the way that you'll absolutely nail these rhythms. So 1, 2, 3. That's the rhythm. And just use your 1st finger to go down fret by fret until we hit the A sharp. And it's exactly the same as that pattern. So we've got the octave. I'm muting again this E string. Got the index to the middle finger. And that hammer on. So after my 1st finger finishes playing the A sharp, the millisecond, the pinky finger, which is the one I'm using for the octave, as soon as that's playing that note, my 1st finger is already where it needs to be, always being 1 step in the future. And that applies, that concept applies for both hands. That's how you'll get your technique really fluid and really accurate. So we've got octaves again, that's that pattern, 2 across, 2 down. A little shift across to the 3rd fret E string. the F sharp, and then finally, very similar, but I'll break this down in a minute, we've got now B octaves. Now you can either, with that hammer on there, use your third to fourth finger for that. If you really want to do, you could use your second finger. Now if you're playing octaves, first finger and then third finger, then you would use your second finger. Now I use little finger here, many players do, because it just reduces the stretch between when you're playing octaves, you know? You know, so if that's what you want to do, that's fine, you can do it. Okay, that's the last bit. So we've got the B and octaves going from the 3rd fret to the 5th fret. Again, that's a hand shift. So it's that concept again of having fingers always one step in the future. When I'm playing this, that octave there, that B there, as soon as that's happening, I'll give you a close-up. I'm on the move, okay? Now that is the entire bass line all the way through. Sometimes it slows down and drops out, but that's the bass line. Let's break it down now. So we're in the key of D sharp minor, which is a really awkward, weird one. It's the relative minor of F sharp major. Now when I'm tuned down a half step, that will start on where you would think a G would be, on the 10th fret of the A string. So D sharp minor, F sharp major, they're related. Now at this point, when you've got this many sharps, it's much easier to think which note doesn't have a sharp, and there's only one in this key, it's B. So you've got D sharp, E sharp, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, and there's the B that's not sharpened, and C sharp, D sharp. Now here's something absolutely crucial. I go on about this in so many lessons. In terms of theory, this is one of the most important things I think to learn. And it's the fact that if you have a key like this, D sharp minor, you have 7 different notes, and on every one of those notes you get a chord, okay? And that's what bass lines are built from. So those notes at the beginning, I might play it in different places like this, you know. So I'm starting on the 7th fret, and the D sharp minor scale is this. Give you a close-up. 1, 3, 4. Finger numbers here. Same again. 1, 3. So finger numbers 1, 3, 4, 1, 3, 4, 1, 3. Memorize that. That's an octave. And that note there is a flat 7. So, you know, an arpeggio, you've got root, flat 3rd, 5th, flat 7, and octave. Charlie Puth is not sitting down at his keyboard thinking about this, I don't think. He's just coming up with stuff and it sounds good. But in order to break it down, and also to teach you some theory concepts, and also to get you thinking about these patterns, that's what I'm talking about this. So you've got an octave, and that flat 7. Just played down there, okay? Okay, and then we've got the C sharp. Notice it's the same pattern. We've got an octave, and that flat 7. And all of these chords, you can see them above the notes there, they belong to the key of D sharp minor. Let's go through this and I'll explain that a bit further. That's just a lovely little movement to get from one chord to the other, which is the A sharp minor. Again, exactly the same pattern as the other chords. These happen to have all the same notes in them, right? Roots, octaves, and flat 7. And here, that note on the 4th fret doesn't belong to the key. But here's the thing, there's 1,000,001 ways to get from one chord to another. One very easy thing to do is to use notes from the scale. So notes from the scale. Again, that's too much, it doesn't sound very good, but if you boil things down, you have bass lines that belong to keys, and like D sharp minor, and generally you use the chord tones from all the different chords within it, you use the scale tones, and then, you know, this is a good lesson of, you can use any notes. So let's move on. So we've got that A sharp minor, and then you've got B major. That's major. Which is why we've got that major seventh. It's the only chord out of that bunch of chords in that chord progression that doesn't have this flat seven. Let's go through this, okay? Because you may need this explaining. So we've got, that's your D sharp natural minor scale. I'm going to take you through the seventh chords that come from it. A seventh chord is just where you play the notes from the scale. That's the scale. You play 1, 3, 5, 7, and that gives you a seventh arpeggio. We play arpeggios. If you played that together at the same time on a piano or on a guitar, it would be a chord. Okay, so you've got D sharp minor 7. E sharp minor 7 flat 5. Now plenty of these chords aren't used in this progression, but I'll keep going. F sharp major 7, again not one used here. G sharp minor 7. A sharp minor 7, that's used. B major 7, that's used as well. C sharp 7. Even though they're called C sharp in attention, see how that works? Got the root and the octave and the flat seventh. They all belong within that arpeggio. And then we're back. So we have this set of 7 different chords that come from this key. It's a harmonized scale. And here's where I want to just dive into a few ideas of perhaps how you might create something like this for your band or what have you. So let's stick with the same chords. Do exactly the same chord progression, and you know, let's sort of nick the ideas. There I'm just doing nothing very interesting in between the chords. I just selected that rhythm, octaves, and then stuck in a seventh. For these chords, the pattern is exactly the same, just the last one, the B, it's that, okay? Let's mix things up. So there I was just doing D sharp minor 7, going to the B major 7, and just back and forward. Let's do that. We'll go D sharp minor 7, it's a 7th fret. I'm making this up as we go along. This is the sort of thing I'd like you to do as well. There's the B major 7. There's the C sharp minor 7. And there's the A sharp minor 7. Let's make something up using that exact order. That could be good. What about the same thing? Maybe I'll remove a few notes and maybe I'll link things up a little bit better as well. Not better, just differently. Okay, so there, the little notes in between that I was using are just notes from the scale. Here's a D sharp. Now, instead of going, always know a scale up like that, ascending, but also descending. D sharp, C sharp, B, A sharp. Again, weird when you're tuned down to be doing this, but there you go. just notes from the scale. And when you're composing, when you're thinking of ideas, a lot of the time you want to strip back. Why is this bass line so good? The whole thing sticks to the similar rhythms. So if you listen to the original, and I recommend that you do, you'll realize that there's not much rhythm going on. The bass is really carrying the rhythm as well as the harmony notes. Okay, it's a very good example of the bridge that the bass is between the harmony and the melody and the rhythm. Okay, so it's also got space. You can see those things are rests. It's a hook. A hook is like a sort of fancy thing that you hear in music that you latch onto. You know, pop music is all about hooks. This isn't like a James Jamerson type improvised pattern, which itself is an amazing thing. This is a very well crafted bass line. See how the last two bars, they have the same rhythm and the same octave sort of thing? Now it leads you very nicely back around. So we've got space, we've got the fact that it's a hook, the tone is amazing, even though it's not a bass guitar, the tone is really, really good. I've put some Waves CLA bass on this, you know, so there's quite a lot of compression, a little bit of subs, a few things going on to make it sound a little bit poppier. So think about your tone, the timing is bang on, that there's a rhythm kind of portion of this. There's lots of things that make up a great bass line. Okay, to finish, I just want to show you something. This is a 5-string, it's tuned standard, so you've got your E, A, D, G, and the low string here is a low B. Now, if I were to play a tension in a gig, I wouldn't, you know, you've got options. You've got those extenders, haven't you, that you can extend down to usually a D. Now, I need a low C sharp on this. So if I wanted to play it exactly like the original, or if I had a gig with Charlie Puth and it wasn't played on synth bass, maybe it was on bass guitar, then what would I do? So you could get an extender and go down to C sharp, and then all the positions are weird. I would be weirded out by that. Or you could just get a 5-string, and now it's like I've got access to that D sharp without having to tune down. And there's a C sharp, a low C sharp. And I can play it as the original, that's how it goes. I adapted it by going from a high octave to a low, and it doesn't sound quite right. Also, because I'm not tuned down, the notes are kind of, there's a D sharp, I know where they are. So this is just one of those things. If I'm playing a gig and I've got, this happens a lot when you're on a gig and you've got something like Superstition, which is an E flat. You've got tunes like this where you're going down to a C sharp. If I'm playing, 50 tunes and there's only 1 or 2 that need to go lower, I'll often take a 5-string and just use the 5-string. I'm completely used to playing a 5-string now, and 4-string. It's all the same to me. It's just what sounds good, what's good for the job in hand. So when I play live, I often use a 5-string. It kind of covers everything. Something you might want to think about. I've got plenty of videos that go into further depth onto the harmonizing of a major scale. I've got a course from beginner to bassist, which really takes you from very beginner to quite intermediate, actually. So check that out if you want way more on the harmonized scales and how to improvise and loads more stuff like that. But I really would recommend that you learn how to harmonize a scale, and then you listen to bass lines and figure them out in this way and work out, why does it sound good? It's going to be the tone, it's going to be the note selection, which when you do enough bass lines like I'm doing now, you'll realize that the same things are used over and over and over and over again. So learn those handful of things, and then you'll be much better at listening to bass lines, figuring them out, but then also composing bass lines, improvising, jamming with other people. Everything will get better by doing this. So I hope you got something from that. If you did, please do like the video, share it, and subscribe to the channel. Any questions you have or any suggestions of other bass lines like this, do let me know. See you next time. Have a great day.